just a agenda for today. I'm going to go over the distillation. I'm going to go through the loot item shapes in Cairo. Then I'm going to go through the contract structure. I'm going to touch on bit mapping, compression, why that's important, or how we're using it. Then go into some of the libraries of computing the statistics together, and then test structure. And if I'm going super fast, like I don't know. Well, look, if after all this you're still not sure, feel free to just reach out to me. And I'm hoping that we can just get like a working group going after this, and we can just start, chipping away at some of the bits that need doing. But this is, I've kind of set it up, all the structure up now. It's just a matter of filling in the gaps and adding some more functions. So just to give everyone an overview. So this is what we're doing. So we're taking the loot bag and the GA bags, and we're putting them in a distillation contract, which is going to split the items up into the individual bits. And so this is a original NFT contract, and then the distillation happens, and the items get split up into their, the bags get split up into each of their items. And so this is at Starknet. Actually, I might just do that, just so it's clear. So that's the core of the beginning. This is what we're doing to start with. We're going to split the items up into their own individual ERC 1155 NFTs. Now, just to touch on 1155s quickly, 1155s can be fungible, as in they can have decimal points, or they can, they can be stackable and not unique, or they can actually be unique. So I'm going down the path of doing these as 1155s because if you have all the items stored in the same, it's cheaper to transfer 1155s in batch than 721s. So this is the path that we're taking right now. And so these items will be actually individual. They'll just be like ID 1 to infinity. They'll just keep IDing up as they get produced, and as they get minted, sorry. And so the way the distillation works is if you have a loot bag or a GA bag, you'll go to this contract, you'll hit distill, and then these items will either on the first distillation, they'll appear 1-to-1 in your bag, and subsequent distillations, they won't actually appear 1-to-1 in your bag. They'll actually get split into their individual parts. So the individual parts are the Falchion. How do you spell this? How do you say this? Falchion? Falchion's the base item. Then of anger is like the order. And then, this is a prefix. And then there's no suffix here. The suffix is the bit at the end. And then a +1. And those are the individual parts. So you get the item, and then you split these little bits off. Hang on. Apologies for my sketchy presentation. I just whipped this up because so there's more information on here. But I don't want to go too deep into like kind of these little bits right now. I just kind of want to go more into Cairo. So once the item exists on Starknet, it'll have all this on-chain metadata. So it'll have an ID, it'll have a class, it'll have a slot, as in like where it actually sits on the adventurer. It'll have the agility, attack, armor, wisdom, vitality. It'll have its prefix. If it has a prefix, it'll have a suffix, have an order, bonus, a level, age, and XP, and anything else that, like, if anybody actually has, and anything else that we want to add. This is still a work in progress, so open to suggestions about how we want to structure this metadata. as well. And then once the item exists on StarkNet, this is the other aspect of this project, which is the adventurer token, which is going to be a soulbound NFT, so to speak, where you will be able to equip each of the loot items to it. And so think of this as like it's probably not going to be a this is going to be another contract that you mint, and this will be the shape of its metadata, and you'll be able to equip items to it, which will be the loot items. And the adventure will have its own metadata, like you'll be able to give it a name. It'll have an age, which will be like the timestamp of when it got created. We'll have XP, which will generate when you go into experiences. You'll be able to assign an order to it, and anything else that we also want to add. I just want to illustrate, like, this is all open source, so if anyone has good ideas, just feel free to spout them out. And so these items, players will earn them in quests, and you'll be able to level them up by fusing them together. So if you take 2 level 1 katanas and fuse them together, you get a level 2 katana. And so what this does is it creates this like permanent sync of items. So they get inflated by the distillation, and they also get inflated by like earning them in quests, and then players can fuse them together and level them up. And so it creates this like permanent sync. It's kind of like the gem compression in Diablo. And so you can imagine this like just keep leveling up to like hang on. One sec. Sorry. I just logged out of my Gmail. All right, sorry, back up. So you can see here, like this is still a work in progress as well. But the idea is that you combine items together once they reach a certain XP, and then you can level them up, and you get this like leveling system which consumes a lot of the base layer items, which allows people to put in time and level up their items and then sell them on the marketplace. And then once an item gets to a specific level, you can actually apply you can actually give it a prefix or suffix by like spending a rune, and the rune randomly assigns a prefix or suffix according to the item. Loot Hero actually had a great suggestion last week about that. And runes can be crafted with resources, or they can be found in quests and dungeons or whatnot. And the runes are the things that you get if you split a loot bag up, and like the prefix will be a rune, for example, or like the of anger is a rune, and that's what you need to. You basically take the rune and you take the item, and you infuse them, and you get assigned a prefix or a suffix. So the question is, well, why are we doing on-chain characters? So the idea with all this is that we want to create, like, loot was about, this bag. There was no game around it. There was a lot of information in the contract, but there's no interface to allow it to, interop with any other game. Well, not on layer 2 and L1. Obviously we can't do games on L1 because it doesn't make any sense. So what we want to do now is we create this, standardized adventurer contract, which is like um, it's an interface that other contracts can interface with, and quickly make experiences that allow you as a player just to drop your adventure in. And so if we standardize this interface, just like how ERC 721 standardized the NFT standard, we can make it easy for developers to build new things. And like, firstly, they're going to be questing in crypts and caverns. They're going to be questing on realms, and you'll be able to craft items with them. And these adventurers will be free to play. And so this is how we scale to thousands of people playing, because on Starknet, it's going to cost a few cents to mint an adventurer, and so people can get going with a few clicks and for free, basically. And they can earn by actually playing the game and fusing items together and being smart about how they do that. So just before I go straight into the Cairo, I hope I covered everything. This was pretty high level. I jumped around a little bit, but if anyone has any questions about this before I jump into the Cairo.
A quick question. If it's too deep, we don't have to go into it, but on the cost, if it's free to play, are we worried about like bots, just like overrunning the game and like extracting value? Is there an easy way to prevent that? Or a simple way, I should say?
Or you mean like a bot that like automatically trawls the marketplace, buys items, fuses them together?
Yeah, just like if like in the treasury ecosystem, they had like this recruit legion,
Mm.
and it was free. You could just but it would get like these really small drops. But if you run a little bot farm and you have 10,000 of these things, getting a bunch of small things that kind of adds up, and then whatever that resource is that they were harvesting kind of got overinflated. It just kind of caused some problems. So it's like if you have that free to play, it's kind of like if gas was free on L1 or something on a
Get
blockchain, right? If
spammed.
gas is too low, you can get spammed, right?
Mm.
So just thinking about that, like even if there's a small cost for
Mm.
that entry, it
Yeah.
does
Well, we could
prevent that
make
a
it
little
a
bit.
small cost of lords. That just stops that.
Yeah, I
Maybe
think
like
that
10,
might be the way to do it.
maybe like whatever the value of, maybe it's like $5 or something. Just automatically, whatever that amount of lords is. We hit it on Chain Oracle or something, and it's just $5 straight up in lords to create one of these things. But you can't trade them, which I think is good, because we kind of want value to accrue to the items, not to these adventurers, because the adventurers will be able to die. That's the current thinking, is that these have permadeath, and so you kind of want to keep them alive. But like if they die, like it doesn't matter. You don't lose the items. You just kind of lose the time that you've put in to create this adventurer, and you can't trade them. So it's more like intrinsic value in that sense. That's the current idea.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that, and I think a small uh, floor for instantiating new adventures could help with the bots a little bit.
Yeah. No, I have had that thought. Um, yeah, it does make sense to maybe perhaps do a tiny cost of it. It just stops that. Yeah, as you said, that
Yeah.
totally free to play aspect might make things a little screwy.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That was my only question.
Cool. Anybody else? If not, I'll dive straight into. All right. Now I'm probably going to jump around a little bit here, because this is, if you haven't written any Cairo, this might, or if you haven't written any smart contracts, this may be a little gibberish to you. But hey, stick around and I don't know. Okay, so this is our monorepo contract monorepo, which is you can find it in our GitHub. It's called Realms Contracts, and it contains all of our Cairo code for all the projects that we're building. We might spin them out into the individual bits in the future, but at the moment it's just for environment purposes. It's just much easier having them all in here. And so what we're going to focus on is this little loot folder. So if you do want to dive in, I know maybe a few people on the call have actually cloned the repo. So this is on this branch. I haven't pushed this yet, but I'll push it after the tutorial. So what we're going to talk about is firstly how I'm writing these contracts, because it's definitely a gear change from how Solidity is written. It's more akin to like regular programs to a degree, but it still has its own kind of flavor. Basically, the way you write Cairo is, well, in Solidity you have this thing called inheritance. You don't have that in Cairo. You need to write small, reusable, like functional libraries, basically, that contain no state. And you do this because you want to be able to test all your logic effectively and quickly. And so the way that this whole way that I'm structuring the adventurers is that I create these libraries, and these libraries have these small functions in them, and the small functions do a bunch of different calculations. And so you can see here, I am computing the total statistics of a loot item. And then I'm summing them all up together, and then I'm returning the total statistics. And then this gets displayed in the metadata. Now, this is like running quite a bit of computation, so this would be very tricky to do in Solidity as well, because we're compressing information with bitmaps, and then we're unbundling it all, and then we're summing it all together, and we're like fetching information from a bunch of different contracts. So it's quite tricky to do in Solidity, and it uses actually a lot of gas. But because we're running on StarkNet, this is actually very, very cheap. And this will work in view functions, as in like you could just request this function and the function won't fail. And so first thing we need to do is in writing, I mean, this is like how you kind of write any program, is you come up with your data structure. And so in this file called constants, we have our struct item, which is the loot item, and we have this is like the shape of the item, and so we have all the bits of it, and these are all stored as individual felts, which are like just a storage selector in Cairo. And then we have the adventurer, which has its own shape, and then it also has, you can also nest structs in Cairo. So I'm selecting the item here, and so I can expand the item out when I fetch this in a function. And then I have the adventure state, which is used for compression, and then I have packed adventure state. Some of this sounds probably going to sound gibberish, but it'll make sense when I get to it. And then I have I'm setting up a namespace, which is basically mapping all the information, all the fixed information, which allows it to be easily fetched in the contracts. Same I'm doing with the slot. You see here, I'm just mapping each item to its specific slot. I haven't done them all yet because there's 100 of them. And then I'm also giving each item an ID in a namespace. And then I'm also giving each item an agility in a namespace. And then I do this basically for every bit of base data that we're going to use. And vitality, etc. And that's the rest of this file. This is all the loot items. And obviously all these like values, these are all like, this is what we need to balance. And that's what's going to take quite a bit of time. So all these numbers are just like dummy holders for now. But because they're all allocated here, we can just update them. Then update the contract, and then everything gets balanced. So I'll go to the item statistics file. So this little function here is basically fetching. It allows us to fetch information in this lookup. It's basically a lookup table, and so I've created these functions are all very similar. So I've got item class, I've got item slot, I've got base agility, and what this function does is it takes an item ID and it returns the statistic, and you use this get label location item agility, and you set this little label here, and below it you do define word, which is DW, and you set in the namespace value item agility, if you remember here. So item agility dot pendant, so you can select just like in JavaScript, you can just do like this, and you can you can get the actual you can get 10, for example. So you can dot select, and you can actually do nested namespaces as well, which is quite handy. And so all this is doing is taking in the item ID, and it's returning the namespace of this the value of this item. As this is kind of like just like an array, and it's really all it is. It's just a really nice way to store information, and you can just make these things massive. And so these are just like lookup tables basically. And so I've done it for the base attack, base armor, base wisdom, base fatality, etc. And so you could do this for whatever. And so the idea is that we create these like base level functions, which then allow us to compose all these values together, and we get a final, see here, base statistics, which I'm importing this, I'm importing this namespace in here, and then I'm calling the base agility function, and I'm passing in the item ID, and it's returning me the agility of that, which is what it's fetching here. And so it creates this nice little composable library, which we can then pull into these higher level functions. And so by doing this, we can, we create the base statistics here, which aren't going to change, and then we compute the one layer up. We compute the statistics together, and that we get a total item statistics. And then when we get down to the prefix, which I haven't done yet, is the prefix could also then add a multiplier to the agility, or it could add a multiplier to the wisdom, or whatever. And so you can really create this nice dynamic library all on chain by doing this. And so this is mostly what this tutorial is going to be about, is how we structured this, and how we get to then adventurer. Yeah. So you can see in the adventurer library, I've got I've taken it up another layer, so you can see loot items here. I'm getting the sorry, where am I? Loot items, which is the namespace from the library item, which is here, and I'm pulling in the calculate item stats, and I'm passing the item, and then see here, I'm passing in the weapon, and it's returning me all the statistics for that weapon. Same with the chest item, head item, waist item, foot item, hands, neck, ring, and then I'm summing all these statistics up together, and then I'm returning a total agility, attack, armor, wisdom, vitality of the adventurer. And so, from a front end point of view, we can just ping the, we can just fetch the adventurer's ID, and it returns us all their statistics, which is all computed in the background, and it's storing very little state. So when things change, as in when experiences happen, most of the stuff that will change is just like the actual item will change its, if it gets a prefix, then the prefix will automatically get computed, and it will return the value of the agility. And so the benefit of doing storage costs on chain is very, very expensive, and so by doing it this way, we can just leverage the kind of heavy computation needed to do all this, and we can pull together a total statistics for an adventurer, and then we can use those statistics in games. So I'll just stop here if anyone has any questions about this. I did go rather fast, but I did warn this was going to be rather technical.
Does this current design allow the swapping of items between adventurers once the adventure has been initialized?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
It does.
So yeah. So like the adventurer has so I'll show you here. So this is the adventurer state. This is what we store on chain, and we store the item ID, or like the actual NFT ID, in the adventurer state. And so if what's a neck item, a pendant. So let's just say it's a pendant, and it's NFT ID 371. When the adventurer equips this item, 371 will get stored here in its next slot, and then basically in the computation of the stats, it'll fetch the item ID, and then it'll return whatever the new stat value is.
Yep, got it.
Yeah. So yeah, this allows for I hope I made a lot of sense. I may not have, but what this allows is it allows us to really just create these base level statistics, as in the item agility of the pendant, for example, and then everything else on top of it is basically just computed. So we're going to have to come up with, say, the prefix multiplier, the prefix agility multiplier for a pendant, for example. But we'll just do another namespace, and we'll just compute it all together on the fly when we need to fetch that information. And if anyone doesn't like these statistics, they can just fork this and create their own library as well. If people don't agree with the way that we've taken it. Yeah.
I was looking at the item, looking at the item struct, and just trying to think of as primitive as possible. It's agility. I think maybe weight is almost better than agility. It's if we were able to come to consensus on a weight, the weight of a warhammer versus a club. I think we could all agree that the club is probably much lighter and therefore is going to be more agile. But if we're trying to build this, as incremental as possible in these kind of layers that grow upwards towards fidelity and optionality, maybe at the item level we should be thinking more about just physical properties. What material is this thing made out of? It's metal. How much does it weigh? 5 kilograms or something like that.
Yeah, no, I like that. I hadn't thought about the weight, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we could go deeper, and that might, it might be trickier to balance.
I think at the item level it would work really well, because another thing like the class makes a lot of sense with an adventure, But for an item, when I look at those classes, it's really just like what type of item is it? Like in like say the weapons case, it's like is it a blade? Is it a bludgeon? Is it some sort of magical item? Um,
Mm.
so like the item class, it's more the type of like for the weapons, it's like type of weapon. Is it a blade? Is it a bludgeon? Is it magic?
Mm.
So it's like when I look at the adventurer stats like agility, attack, armor, wisdom, vitality, those resonate really well. But when I think about the items and trying to make that
Mm.
um, as reusable and composable as possible, I do tend to I think more about the physical characteristics of these things and trying to agree on that. And I think
Mm.
there's a lore component to that too, because like as people start using these items in stories, they are kind of assigning these physical characteristics of them, and maybe we can synergize with that as well from a contract perspective.
Mm. No, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought about going deeper than that, but yeah, I mean maybe like weight material, maybe like a protection amount or something. Um, which is like, obviously a ring doesn't have any protection, but greaves or something, metal greaves does. Um, I don't know how you define that, but yeah, I mean we could go really really base layer with these. Um, but yeah, I mean the
Yeah,
yeah.
I guess what it would introduce is maybe a layer just between like the current struct, like item agility. If there was something that was just weight, then for like the Realms loot project, when it wanted to calculate the item's agility, it would just take the weight and then do something to it to decide what agility it has. So I think it would be easy to fit that into this.
Mm.
Um, but I think would be more expressive for other people because I mean, really, I feel very confident that we can build something that works really well
Mm.
with this framework. But I think like the big success has for Loot has always been right, like having lots of people building on top of it
Mm.
together, which is really exciting. And setting something up like that on StarkNet is so exciting.
Mm.
um, that it's just like, yeah, if we can get this base layer right so that someone could say, oh, I don't like what you guys did,
Mm.
but you guys provided me with the foundation to build the way I think that it should be done.
Mm.
Like that's kind of the best case scenario, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's almost like creating the physics of the world in a sense. It's like these materials, um,
Yeah.
they're
And
really
so like
immutable.
what statements could people would it be very unlikely that someone would disagree with? Like if we said that like this
Yeah,
item is more
yeah,
agile than that item, they might be
yeah,
like, oh, well, technically, if it was this style of this item, it could be, But it's like if we say that like a sword is a blade, it's just like, okay, yeah, a sword's a blade, and club is a bludgeon, or
mm,
like a katana's made out of metal, right? Like that, those kind of statements feel like probably everybody agrees with those. Like the more of those statements we can find and have that first, like most primitive layer of the items,
mm.
just based on that, I think that would be pretty cool. But I'll spend some extra time thinking about that, and I have the project checked out, so I could potentially maybe just push up something that just takes this current structure and just provides something right underneath it, and
Mm.
then maps cleanly right up into what we have here too.
Yeah, because still the structure stays the same. I think yeah, the like these little these little functions, and just fetching the information, and then pulling them all together, still stands. It's just
It
like
does,
how
yeah.
deep we go, right? It's just like, um, but yeah, no, that's a good idea. Have a think about that. Um, because yeah, I mean, nothing in here is like final. It's just I think this is the way we should go, and it's a kind of nice way to pull all the information together, into a nice fully on chain, in a nice on chain way. Um, like, can you imagine like storing all this information in Solidity? God, it cost you a bomb. But this kind of just gets sucked up at compilation time when you pull it in, and it just gets injected.
It's also amazing just looking at how much data there is, even in its raw form, right?
Mm.
It's
Yeah, I'm
like
imagining with your next deeper layer, we'll probably go a little deeper as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is the thing. There's no contract size limit, so I mean, you could make this 5,000 lines long if you want. That's the beauty of the Cairo VM. No, don't have that constraint. Well, I'll just leave that stuff here. But okay, so well, let's go on to the next bit. So where was I? Okay, so I think we got up to here, the items. Okay, so then this little function basically just sums up all those items by passing in the IDs of the adventurer, which is all stored in the state, and then we return a full statistics of the adventurer, including all the agility and everything. So the other part I just want to touch on is this idea of bit mapping. Has anybody who here has played with bit mapping? I see Pascal is online. Um, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I've done it from time to time. I'm not an
Okay, cool,
expert on it, but I've
cool,
done
cool.
some like embedded system stuff in a past life, so done a fair amount of it.
Okay, cool. Because yeah, a lot of this, like the way we store the information on here, we want to pack it in, right? Because like we don't want to have to store a single slot for each of these bits, right? Like, and a lot of these IDs are only like, well, this is 41 bits, so. But I made. I'll probably just. Well, we'll go through this function. Okay, so you know what bitmapping? Bitmapping is like basically turning everything into bytes, and then storing the raw bits rather than storing the decimal value, and it allows you to basically it allows you to compress a lot of information into a single storage slot. And so we can take, what would take 10 to 20 storage slots. Well, here we've got 13 slots, and we fit this all inside. I think we'll fit this all inside 3 felts. And so to do this the regular way, well, uncompressed way, it'll take us 12 slots, which when you're storing everything on chain, each slot costs X amount of gas. And so we massively save on gas costs here. And the way we do it in Cairo is this little function that it's in the repo. It's called unpack data. And what you do is you pass in the packed data. Actually, maybe I'll just go pack first. Yeah, so the way this works is you take the raw decimal value, which is the class, so this will be like 1, and you shift it by a number of bits, and the bits are here, and so we're shifting it by we're not shifting the first one at all, but then we're shifting the second one by 4, and then we're shifting the third one by 10, and next one by 4, and then the final one by 20. And that's what this exponential is here. And that's what I'm doing here. So I'm taking the raw decimal, which this would be like 1 or whatever. It would be like whatever the class is, might be 5. We're shifting it, and then we're storing it as a variable, and then we basically sum them together, starting from the right-hand side. So we go class, age, name, order, XP, store into the P1, and then we pack the adventurer into this. This is another struct. Structs are just like easy ways to pass around information. Most people know what they are. And then we store them P1, P2, P3. And then we return the packed adventurer. And then Yeah, so that's how you pack it. And then to unpack it, you pass in the actual, like, so you see here, P1. This is what I packed here. That's what this is, which is shifted. I'm passing in the actual packed felt value, and I'm giving it an index, and then oh, that's actually a bug. Huh. I may not have finished this when I did it. Okay, this is a better example. Uh, Packed Adventurer P2, so this is like a felt value. I'm passing in the zero index, and I'm giving it this value, which is what it's going to the mask size, which is determined by the basically the next like how big of a bitmap how many bits you're giving it. And in this scenario, I'm giving it 41, and so I'm passing this value in, which I'll explain in a second. And then I'm just doing this up all the P2 until the end. And so I'm storing 4 values in here, and I'm unpacking 4 values, and I'm unpacking them at index 0, 41, 40, 82, and 123. And now this value comes from, you can get it by, see this here, it's a mask size, and you can get it by, see, 1 bit, 2 bit, 3 bit, 4 bit, 5 bit, 6 bit, up to 41. And if you sum all those values together, you get the mask size. And that's what this value is. And so if you wanted to pass in 4 bits, it's 15, because it's 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 8. Yeah, so that is how you bitmap in Cairo. You can basically just follow the pattern that I've done, and it will make sense. It's kind of a bit of a weird concept if you've never done it before, but it works. Any questions about this? Because this is like a pretty repeatable pattern that happens in all of our code, so it's good to get an understanding of it before you dive in.
All good here.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Where's the bug though? What line is the bug at?
I think where is it? It's in this bit here. I haven't think this is meant to be actually.
Oh yeah, because that number is going to be a lot bigger, right?
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah.
That's the 4. Yeah. Yeah, that I need this value here. I just haven't done it yet. I need to figure that number out. But that's I don't think I completed this. I did this a few weeks ago. Yeah, so that's basically every little function that makes up these 2 libraries. It's mostly using this define word function, which is just like a lookup table. It's like just and selecting by the ID, and bitmapping. And like if you master those 2 and fully understand them, then like Cairo is a piece of cake. So I think you'll be coming from a Java background, lead hero. You'll be totally fine. Does this all seem straightforward? Is this the first bit of Cairo that you've seen?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. But it's yeah, it all comes down to writing these little libraries that you like fetch by a dot function, because it just allows you to create
Yeah.
these nice little composable libraries, which then you can just pull into all your. And I haven't even shown you a core contract yet. This is all just libraries. Like this is a contract because it has a storage variable, and we just pull in the libraries into this core library. But like it's often it's the final step that I do in writing my contracts now, is that I do all the libraries first, and I get all the logic right, and then we do the final contract. and I'll show you how I do the tests now. So tests are actually also written in Cairo using this tool called Protostar, which I'll drop you the link to that. But you write them like this. You write so you see down here, I've got my tests folder, and I've got test adventurers, test items, and I've just created this function called test items. And what it's doing is I'm pulling in the library, so calculate adventurer, I'm getting the items, and I am passing in the these variables, which I've defined here using the struct, item struct. And I am also then fetching in these constants from the tests constants file here. So you can see here I've done a nested namespace. So test gear.weapon.id, and I've just then imported the item IDs from the actual real constants file, so we keep everything consistent. And then I've just created a namespace for this item. And so, so then I've just done, test gear weapon ID, class, slot, agility, etc. And then this just creates this this little test stub, which then we pass into the items calculator, and then it returns me the agility, attack, armor, wisdom of all these items that I've just mapped. And then that way we can just test the, we can test the outcome of what this function actually does. So.
I think you're going to get to it. I'm just expecting an assert or something here. Where's the I know what the answer is and prove that you gave me the right answer. Is that coming up?
Yeah. Okay. I actually haven't done the asserts in this this library yet.
Okay.
But you do them. I'll show you one of my other libraries. So you can just print in here, and so I've just as I was just this is still obviously whip, but you can test them here. But you can see in the other files, see the settling game's obviously a lot more complete. So you can see here, you can just chuck an assert and equals whatever, and then if this does obviously this fails, then you'll get an error chucked here.
Yeah.
So I'll just do it. Assert. Just yeah. So obviously final tests need asserts. Obviously. See, this will just this will fail. There we go.
Yes, you use the assignment operator with the equal to.
Hang on. Yeah. So the thing with Protostar is that, see here, this is like this is what they call hints. It's like because Cairo is kind of built on Python, you can use these curly brackets to basically print into the console like this. But you need to you could fetch the local variables by doing IDs. So you can see here's my local, but you need to do IDs.unpack. Sorry, here. And then it just chucks in assert. It chucks in a error.
And how did you execute the test? What was that command?
Just Protostar test, and then you just point it to a folder. So I'm just pointing it to the whole loot folder.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah, and so I mean, look, most of these tests are the same. They're I'm just I'm checking the agility function that these are all the same. I mean, these are obviously going to pass. And it's a really nice way to test. It's really quick way to test things. Because the flow is, I get my split up, and I get my items up, and doing my thing here, and then I'm running my tests here, and it's quite nice and efficient.
Yeah.
And you just do the dummy data here in these namespaces, and yeah, it's nice and clean. You could definitely go down the wrong path with Cairo and spend a lot of time using the wrong tools, but I would suggest if you want to get started, just clone our repo and use the built-in deb container, which is already set up with everything, and then you're off and running. And if you use
I see
Protostar,
you using
sorry,
I was just gonna say, I see you using Visual Studio Code for your IDE.
yes, you discussed it.
Yeah. No, no, I like Visual Studio Code. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I was
Any configs or anything like that like you customize, or just pretty
um
much out of the box is decent enough?
we've got this dev container which has all the like it's still like it's you might have to pip install your the latest ones because sometimes I don't know it hasn't been building. There's still lately, but we're using this loot container, which has everything we
Oh,
need.
okay.
So it's
Oh,
already got a
nice.
container. So you just do like uh, remote containers rebuild container, and it rebuilds the remote container, and then you're off and running. So
Oh,
you don't
I
have to.
wasn't even aware of that Visual Studio. So you're
Yeah, you
doing
don't.
Docker containers right in Visual Studio?
Yeah, that's basically what it is. But you don't have
Oh,
to. So you
yeah.
don't have to set up any local, environment or
Yeah.
anything.
Damn, I didn't even know about that feature. Make a note of that.
Yeah. But you might have to, because I think I might still be running the old Cairo Nile. I think this has been upgraded. I haven't upgraded it yet. But yeah, I mean that's basically it. Um, like, did that give you a pretty solid overview of like what we're trying to do and the structure of everything?
Yeah, I think it definitely did.
Um, yeah. But I mean, once you get familiar with like how you write these little things, like just ignore this part in Cairo. I'd probably do like the Cairo 101 as well, because I didn't cover a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah,
I didn't cover a lot of the like basics. I kind of just went straight
yeah.
into it.
That's
But
yeah. I figure I didn't even. Yeah, I don't know what those things are, but I feel like I can just figure that out on my own. I feel like that's it's going to be in the 101 stuff, and I assume
yeah,
I'm capable of understanding what those things are.
yeah, they're like if you read the
I'm
Cairo
worried about.
docs, you'll be fine. They're like they're built in, so like you need to. Most functions don't require you to change them, but like if you want to do bit mapping, you need to use the bitwise function. You need to use the bitwise built-in. See here, I've changed them here.
Yeah,
Um, but you never really get rid of them. But if you need to do bit packing because it uses like a different built-in function, then you need to use them. But yeah, I mean it's like I don't know. People think Kara is kind of like I don't know tricky, but like I don't know. I think once you kind of understand it, like it's really quite nice. Um, anyway,
yeah. I mean, it looks straightforward enough to me at this layer. Like you said, I mean, the part of it is like this is all just like the underlying libraries and stuff, right? So it's also pretty easy because in terms of being able to check it out and then just test function one, do some work on it, rerun the test. Does it still work? Right? Did I break anything? Kind of easy to get up and running in that regard. You're not even really worrying about like deploying contracts or anything like that. You're just testing, functional code blocks. So
exactly, and that's why I think that's why it's great because we can actually build provable programs, which is what we're doing from like these base little primitives. And you don't even have to deploy the contracts to test them. So if we can get this like these libraries, super solid and expressive, then whipping up this adventurer contract, like we just need to fetch the. All we need to do is just hit the ID, and it'll just unpack everything and return like the total on-chain stats of that adventurer, which then it can be used like against a world boss or whatever. And same with the items. Um, I mean, yeah, I'm really excited just to see how people, play with these items and fuse them together and enchant them and whatnot. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Cool.
me too. I mean, this just feels like the next evolution of loot, like from a contract perspective, right? It's like what got released to us in Solidity
Mm,
was just kind of, you know, primitive, right?
mm,
And I feel like, yeah, when I look at all of this, it's just like it's still at its core is very primitive, but the composability of it, especially being on StarkNet, is just, a million X essentially, right? I mean, even just natively having items that can exist outside of the bag opens up a lot, right? But
mm,
then everything else that's in here, just yeah, I feel the same way you do. This is quite exciting.
mm. Yeah, cool. All right, well, have a crack, and we can get this moving. I think Code Monkey was um having a go as well. I'm not sure where he's up to. Um, I'm not sure who else is actually tackling it, but I'll push this branch, and you can just play around and get up and running. And
Yeah.
and I'll make a. Are you a collaborator and contributor? Do you have a contributor badge? Oh, you're a loot first lord, so I think you automatically have it. All I do is a contributor as well. Oh, you are. Okay,
Great.
cool.
Yeah. I feel like this can. Yeah, I feel like it can check out, run it. Run a few of those tests, and then yeah, just start kind of filling in, like you said. I mean, you kind of left some comments there, like to do. So it's like, all right, let me just fill the rest of this out. Maybe add the test case if the test case isn't completed, and
Yeah,
then yeah, just kind of push
just
up
get
these little
just
small commits, just hack away at it.
yeah, just get familiar with it because I think the next milestone is like we should deploy the um we should deploy the item contract just on testnet and just play around like fusing them together. Um, and summing up all that, we could even just create like a stub website of these as we go, and people can mint them and then fuse them and whatnot, and we can just play around with them. I think that's the next milestone, but I don't think we're that far off. Like I think it's putting in some time to finalize these bits, and to upgrade them. Like we can just set up a proxy to begin with whilst we're testing, and we can it's like a I didn't show you the CLI, but like the CLI basically just allows you to just be like upgrade contract, and it'll upgrade. It will deploy the new one and then swap out the old one. It's quite handy.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on it? If you say there was 5 games building on top of this, and I kind of wanted to have different experience systems. So
Mm,
um, the the Realms loot game has been going on for 2 years. Items have accrued greatness and everything, but then someone else comes along like, hey, I want to launch this new loot game, but kind of want everything to start back at like the initial state of loot, right? Like max greatness 20, you know, and then you'll start from there, but then you can build more experience within my game, but it'll kind of be its own namespace. Um, how do you how do you envision that working? Do you envision people just forking and having their own set of contracts that just do everything separately, or do you think there's an elegant way for us to like provide that name spacing within this set of contracts so that like someone can like it pretty much takes all of this up another layer, right? Where there's something under it that's just like, hey, I am game 5. So here's all the stats for game 5 versus game 7, and allowing people to initialize new games, essentially, something like that. Does that make sense?
yeah,
At least that, like the imagining how that would play out.
I'm thinking about it. Um, hmm. Yeah, I think there is that tricky bit of like how do you standardize the XP system? Hmm.
Because and it is so tricky because if you want a bunch of people just to be able to use it, but also grant XP, then it's kind of easy for someone just if they wanted to circumvent or take advantage of it, deploy their own contract that just gives tons of XP, right? So it's like, do you register like the valid games that you can earn XP? Like there's kind of that whole thing to it. And so, um, yeah, it just feels like
Mm.
having a way to just say, well, in my game, this is the experience that people have within Loot Heroes game. And then if people feel like that game is valid enough, then they can honor that XP, of course. But um, yeah, just finding a way to provide the option for people to have their own experience namespace, I think
Mm.
can be really powerful long term.
Mm. Maybe we could create a interface that like uh, I don't know. Maybe you could choose because basically what we're talking about is having different games having different XP, right? So your XP at different games. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think particularly with the items, like is what I'm thinking about right now. Like those will be a common thing that people will use. They'll gain experience, they'll level up, right? So, right
Maybe you
now,
need to,
like a
yeah. Maybe you need to like. I wonder if there's a way we can extend it so you can basically point the XP to arbitrarily dump, number of different games. And if we just come up with like a standardized
oh,
XP structure.
or another idea that just came to my mind is that if we had the ability to store where all the experience came from, then it would be possible if I had a game that as the developer of that game, I could say, okay, I'm going to pull in all the loot items and their experience, but I'm only going to honor experience that came from contracts A, B, C,
Mm.
right? So we could still have it all in the main contract, but if that main contract kept track of where it all came from, then it'd be pretty easy for the developer side, the client side, to filter out spam if they wanted to.
Mm. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking of like an extension, as in like you point the XP at this other like upgradable contract when you just keep adding games to it, and it returns like the XP from whatever game you select. So you pass in the contract of each game, and if you want to honor two of them, you pass in the XP of those two, and it'll return you the sum of the XP. If you only want to
Yeah,
honor one, just pass in one.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a much better way to structure it, and I think that works perfectly.
Mm.
Yeah, and allows people to potentially use all if they want to use all, or if the community decides that hey, this game is not legit, we should not honor this experience, then yeah, people just remove it from their list, and it's not like forking the contracts to remove that XP. It's just as easy as not pulling in that XP from that one. So yeah, I think that works really well actually.
Mm.
I think that could solve. I think that could be really helpful down the road because if it's just all in one place and something goes off the rails and some of these items just take off in experience because of non-legitimate reasons, yeah, I wonder how difficult it'll be as a community to agree that like, okay, we need to go back and remove all this XP from these different items, right? Because we now determined that they weren't legit. That would be tough. But this other system, I think, would be not difficult at all because it's just really up to the builders to choose what they pull in.
Yeah, needs a bit of thought and structure, but I think something like that could work for sure. We definitely want them extendable, and what you honor. Uh, that this yeah, there's gonna have to be some kind of canonical um, XP as well, but that can be extended. Uh, hmm.
The other innovation that like dude came up with from like Rift and
Hmm.
he's working on Hyper XP now. It's not bulletproof, but I think it's really good, is in HyperXP, in that contract, the way he approaches any contract being able to just um, arbitrarily like assign XP and maybe too much to prevent that from happening without requiring governance is that every day or at some period of time, each of the adventurers is given a non-transferable item that they can go out and give it essentially to the game. So, like the crypt rating, you would go with your loot bag to the crypt contract and you would give it that token. And then that token is effectively redeemable by the crypt contract for XP. And so it doesn't have to do an instant one to one either. So you could have, say, 200 people come to raid the crypts
Mm.
dungeons. It collects these 200. Um, I forget what he called. I think he called them action points in his contract. These action points, and then it could exchange them for the XP, but then decide how to grant that to the 200 adventurers. So it could say that, oh, the ones that destroyed the dungeons are going to get, a bonus, so they'll get 30 each. And then, so, but it still limits how much the crypt contract can actually award because the adventurers had to actually come and use that token. And so it kind of rate limits the whole system in terms of how much XP can flow back in. And I thought that was a really novel approach. It's not bulletproof in all regards, but maybe something that we could think about and try to incorporate as well in terms of like a canonical XP, because it does provide a global rate limiter so that we can know definitively, just like an ERC 20 emission schedule,
Yeah.
only,
Mm.
10,000 XP can be granted per week or something. And it's kind of set in stone.
That's a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I think the only, like I said, it's not bulletproof, and the only really workaround or like only weakness I found is that you could still potentially have someone that just stands up a contract and just kind of like auto harvest them or something. Like there could be that, I guess, if someone really wanted to, they could just spend that action point at this custom contract that they deploy, and that contract's really going to do nothing. Like there is no game. It's just going to store them up and convert it and grant it XP. So instead of the adventurers actually going out and playing games and earning experience, this thing would be pretty much just almost like a staking contract for XP. Um, but even then, maybe that's not so terrible. I mean, I think it still provides a global rate limiter for experience, and I think that's probably the most important thing.
Mm. Yeah, I guess it is limiting what people can do per day as well, though, which might.
Um, yeah, but well, no, that's what's cool though. It's not because the contracts, which are the most fun that people are playing, will be collecting all of these action points, and it doesn't have to grant them out the XP instantly, and it doesn't have to do it linearly. It can choose. So if you get these games that are really fun, that tons of people are just optionally, like they're not trying to harvest XP, they're actually just playing it because it's fun. Those contracts now have tons of these action points stored up, and therefore they have tons of experience internally that they can grant out. And so they could continue like while per day theoretically there's a max mission, these contracts are storing up all of that, like the
Mm.
ones that are really fun. And so they can still give out more technically than is emitted per day to certain adventures for certain quests. So,
Mm. Hmm.
um,
Yeah, maybe it's
yeah,
Did you see the Mirakai drip, ERC 20 drip?
I did. Yeah,
I thought that was a pretty nifty innovation. Um,
yeah, I
perhaps
like that too.
perhaps something like that is the path. Um, it's just you don't really want the to be tokenized, I guess, because you don't want people selling experience. Or maybe you do. I don't know. Do you? You probably don't.
I don't think you. I don't think you do.
You
And
don't want
I
to.
don't think you want it to be too passive either. I mean, it's like an adventurer doesn't gain skill, or like a human being, right? We don't gain skill by doing nothing.
No,
Like time in itself doesn't do anything
no.
for anything. It is more of like an eroder. Like
Mm,
you, you kind of rust your skills, right?
mm,
If you're not sharpening them. So like the drip for experience kind of seems like a staking contract. I mean, I know with the drip you don't have to stake, but that's where I do like a more active. Like I don't like the play to earn model where people are just grinding, but
mm,
most of the fun games you are gaining skill within the game. That skill is helping you acquire better items, right?
mm.
All of these things. So I would like to see us find a model that's similar, but the challenge with the blockchain really is the botability
Mm.
of the whole thing, right? It's just like if all the code's on chain, it is really easy to bot, and
Odd.
in a way, the bots are better than the humans at a lot of these things, right?
Mm.
On chain.
You just got to rate limit them. That's the key, as you said. You got to rate limit them. So then it gives everyone. I mean, that's what we kind of done with the settling game. Is that like your rating is rate limited, basically. So like it gives you don't rate limit it that much, but like it means that the bots don't have that much advantage. Like like you can't give them that much advantage. Um, it's just the bot can do
Yeah,
stuff asynchronously, like 24/7. So you got to take that something that could be done 24/7 out of the game.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Huh. Um. All right. Well, there's a lot to think about, but I have a crack at have a go at all that, and let's. It'd be cool to deploy one of these contracts, deploy the item contract, and even the adventure contract into just like some even via the CLI, and play around with it eventually. Mm.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. I mean,
Mm.
just yeah, there's some really basic scenarios that would just be really cool to see. I mean, even just simple things like trading items or, just really basic things that the original loot contract really has never allowed us to do.
Mm.
Would be pretty sweet. I mean, right? It's like the Greatness 21 items that haven't even been revealed yet, right? It's
That
like
meant
seeing them.
real.
Well, yeah, like the Divine Robe in the loot contract, we only get a Greatness 18 Divine Robe, but there's that separate name prefixes that's reserved already for the Divine Robe Greatness 21.
Oh.
Like like the name, like I think I wrote some code that kind of fast forwards to see because it's deterministic. So if you take like a Greatness 18 Divine Robe and you imagine that in a year it's reached Greatness 21, the name it's going to get is deterministic. It's just it's like one of those things you like read that code as many times as someone has had, and you're like, did like Dom intentionally do it this way, or was it just like it happened to work out this way? But it's kind of like the order of how he did things is why it's exactly deterministic. And so like yeah, like that greatness can go 18, 19, 20, 21, whatever. It's not changing the name that it's going to get. The name was always there from Greatness 1. And so, like, I think the first divine robe that appears in a loot bag, I fast forwarded it, and it's going to be the hate song Divine Robe of Fury.
That's pretty cool.
It's like, how epic is that? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, like as soon as we can start taking these items out of the bag and using them and kind of leveling them up a little bit, I know
Mm.
with the like the distillation model, there's going to be a little bit more flexibility in terms of like crafting these items with the name prefixes. But I think like what you and I talked about is still adhering to the original contract mechanics in terms of certain names always belong with certain items. There's still optionality there, but yeah, I think there's a lot of items that like we just yeah, when you look through them, like I fast forwarded pretty much all of them, and I was just looking through the items, and it's like, you know, like the Warhammer. There's no Warhammers that have a name prefix in any of the bags, and I think those get banned. So there's like an Armageddon Bane Warhammer of power. It's just like,
Mm.
no, I've seen so many of the loot item names so many times that like when you see a new name, you're like, wait, what is that? And then it's like, yeah, no one made this name up. It's like it's an actual that item exists. It's already there. We just need to take out the Warhammer out of the bag, swing it a few times, you
It
know,
becomes great.
level it up,
Yeah.
and it's going to become that. So yeah, I'm excited to get some of this deployed and mess around with it, level up some of these items.
All right, cool. Well, let me know how you go. I'm happy to. I'm just flat out finishing the alpha of the settling. Um, but I'm happy to like. I think I think we're not that far off from deploying. So play around, and I don't know. Let's regroup next week and see where you're at if you're going to tackle it.
Yeah, yeah. You just want to plan on the same time next week,
Yeah,
same place.
let's do it.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks for taking the time.
All right. Thanks, Matt. I'll talk to you soon. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
It was a good chat about loot. All right.
Bye.
Bye bye.